There is a quiet kind of friction that many people live with every day. Not physical friction, mental friction. The sense that something inside is pushing against what is happening, pushing against what needs to be done, pushing against what is being experienced, pushing against what is already here. This resistance often appears subtly. A hesitation before beginning something, a reluctance toward what needs attention, a feeling that something should be different than it is, a quiet tension around what is happening right now. Mental resistance rarely announces itself clearly. It often appears as mild irritation, mild avoidance, mild pressure, mild dissatisfaction, a feeling that something needs to change before things can feel okay. When resistance is present, even simple things can feel difficult. Getting started feels harder. Continuing feels heavier. Finishing feels more effortful. Not because the task itself is more difficult, but because internal friction is present. The mind often resists reality when reality does not match expectation, when circumstances are not ideal, when energy is not perfect, when clarity is not immediate, when progress is not obvious, when comfort is not available. Resistance says this should not be happening. This should be easier. I should feel different. This should already be resolved. This should not take this long. Things should be clearer by now. But life does not always follow internal expectations. Situations develop in their own timing. Understanding develops gradually. Solutions appear through interaction. Learning unfolds through experience. When reality does not match internal expectation, resistance often appears. The mind begins to argue with what is already here. Arguing does not change the present moment, but it does create tension. Tension consumes energy. Energy that could support participation. When resistance is present, part of attention is directed toward wishing things were different, toward imagining alternative circumstances, toward mentally negotiating with reality. But negotiation does not always change conditions immediately. Some things must simply be met as they are, handled as they are, experienced as they are, responded to as they are. Resistance often creates the feeling that movement must wait until conditions feel better, until motivation appears, until clarity increases, until confidence increases, until uncertainty decreases. But movement often creates improved conditions. Action often generates clarity. Participation often generates momentum. Engagement often generates understanding. Waiting for internal certainty often delays progress unnecessarily. Mental resistance often appears as subtle avoidance. Putting things off, delaying decisions, postponing action, waiting for the right feeling, waiting for the right mindset, waiting for the right moment. But the right moment often becomes clearer through beginning, not before beginning. Many people notice that once they start something, the resistance decreases, because the mind is no longer imagining the task. It is interacting with the task. Interaction often replaces speculation. Speculation often exaggerates difficulty, but real engagement often reveals workable steps. Workable steps create momentum. Momentum reduces resistance. Resistance often grows when the mind imagines the entire process at once. All the steps, all the effort, all the time required, all the possible difficulties. But most actions occur step by step, not all at once. Breaking the imagined total into present steps often reduces internal friction. What is the next step? Not the entire process, just the next step. Movement becomes easier when attention returns to what is immediately possible, rather than what is abstractly overwhelming. Resistance often includes the belief that experience should feel different than it currently feels. I should feel more motivated. I should feel more confident. I should feel more certain. I should feel more ready. But readiness often develops through participation. Confidence often develops through experience. Motivation often develops through momentum. Waiting for ideal internal conditions often delays engagement unnecessarily. Life often includes participation in imperfect conditions. Energy fluctuates. Mood fluctuates. Clarity fluctuates. Circumstances fluctuate. But participation can still occur within these fluctuations. Movement does not require perfect internal conditions. It requires willingness to begin where you are. Resistance often increases when the mind compares the present moment to an imagined ideal. How things should be, how things could be, how things once were, how things might become. Comparison creates distance from reality. Distance creates dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction creates resistance. But reality can only be engaged where it currently exists, not where it is imagined to be. Mental resistance often decreases when attention returns to what is actually here. What can be done now? What step is possible now? What response is available now? Clarity often develops through engagement with present conditions, rather than through resistance to present conditions. Resistance often comes from wanting the present to feel more comfortable, more clear, more certain, more ideal. But many meaningful developments occur outside comfort. Learning often includes uncertainty. Growth often includes difficulty. Understanding often includes confusion before clarity appears. When difficulty is interpreted as a problem rather than part of the process, resistance increases. But difficulty often indicates engagement with something new, something complex, something developing, something evolving. Resistance can make difficulty feel heavier than it actually is, because the mind is not only experiencing the challenge, it is also resisting the presence of the challenge. Two layers of effort appear: the effort of the task and the effort of resisting the task. Removing resistance does not remove effort, but it often reduces unnecessary strain. Energy becomes available for participation rather than internal argument. Mental resistance often includes the belief that something is wrong because the present moment does not feel ideal. But many processes include phases that feel uncertain, unclear, incomplete, neutral. These phases do not necessarily indicate problems. They often indicate movement through development. Understanding often emerges gradually. Clarity often increases step by step. Confidence often builds through experience. Resistance often tries to jump ahead, trying to feel complete before the process unfolds, trying to feel secure before information appears, trying to feel certain before understanding develops. But development takes time. Processes unfold gradually. Participation allows this unfolding. Resistance interrupts participation, not by stopping movement completely, but by adding friction to movement. Movement feels heavier, slower, more effortful, because internal energy is divided. Heart directed toward action, heart directed toward resistance. When resistance softens, movement often becomes smoother, more continuous, more fluid, not because everything becomes easy, but because internal conflict decreases. Energy becomes more available for responding to what is actually happening. Resistance often appears strongest when tasks feel personally significant, when identity feels involved, when outcomes feel defining. But identity does not need to be protected in every moment. Participation does not require constant self-defense. Action can occur without constant concern about what action means about the self. You can try something without needing guarantees. You can learn something without needing immediate success. You can explore something without needing certainty. Resistance often says do not move until you feel ready. But readiness often grows through movement. Clarity often grows through engagement. Understanding often grows through interaction. Waiting for complete readiness often delays discovery. Discovery often requires participation. Participation often requires movement before certainty appears. Mental resistance often decreases when attention shifts from evaluation to interaction, from judging experience to experiencing directly, from predicting outcomes to responding to conditions, from protecting identity to participating in life. Movement does not require perfect internal alignment. It requires willingness to engage, to try, to respond, to adjust. Even small movement reduces resistance, because attention returns to what is real, rather than what is imagined. Reality often feels more workable than imagination predicts. Steps often feel more manageable when taken than when contemplated endlessly. Resistance often exaggerates difficulty, because imagination includes uncertainty, but direct experience includes information. Information reduces uncertainty, reduces hesitation, reduces friction. Not all resistance disappears immediately. Some hesitation is natural. Some uncertainty is natural. But resistance often decreases gradually through continued participation. As experience accumulates, as familiarity increases, as confidence develops naturally. Moving without mental resistance does not mean forcing yourself. It means allowing movement without adding unnecessary internal opposition. without adding extra commentary, without adding extra pressure, without adding extra interpretation, just engaging the situation as it is, responding as information appears, adjusting as needed, continuing step by step. You do not need to remove all uncertainty before moving. You do not need to remove all hesitation before beginning. You do not need to resolve all questions before acting. Many answers appear through participation. Many solutions appear through interaction. Many insights appear through experience. Life often becomes clearer through movement. Resistance often delays clarity because movement has not yet occurred. When psychological weight decreases, resistance often softens naturally because the mind is no longer trying to protect identity constantly, no longer trying to guarantee outcomes constantly, no longer trying to secure certainty constantly. Participation becomes more available. Energy becomes more accessible. Movement becomes more natural. You may still feel hesitation sometimes, still feel uncertainty sometimes, still feel difficulty sometimes, but these do not need to stop movement completely. They can exist alongside participation, alongside engagement, alongside continued steps forward. Moving without mental resistance allows life to continue unfolding, without constant internal friction, without constant internal opposition, without constant internal delay. Life continues, movement continues, participation continues, even when conditions are not perfect, even when clarity is not complete, even when certainty is not total. You can move with what is here, respond to what is present, adjust as needed, continue as understanding develops. Mental resistance often softens when it is no longer reinforced through constant interpretation, when experience is allowed to be experienced directly, without constant argument, without constant commentary, without constant pressure for things to feel different than they currently feel. Movement becomes more continuous, more workable, more sustainable, because energy is no longer divided between action and resistance. The task may still require effort, but effort is often lighter without internal opposition. Participation often becomes more natural, more fluid, more possible. Life continues moving, and you can move with it, without needing everything to feel resolved in advance, without needing everything to feel perfect internally, without needing everything to feel certain. Movement itself often creates the conditions that reduce resistance. Step by step, moment by moment, participation continues, and often that is enough. If this episode helped you notice how much extra weight the mind can quietly add to everyday life, consider subscribing to the channel. This space explores how clarity can begin to appear when the constant need to interpret, evaluate, and manage every moment starts to soften. If this conversation resonated with you, liking the video helps more people discover that not everything needs to feel heavy in order to be meaningful or important. You can also share this with someone who may be carrying more internally than they realize and could benefit from seeing that some of that weight was never required in the first place. There are more episodes in this season that continue exploring what life can feel like when experience is allowed to unfold without the mind constantly adding extra pressure. Life can remain, participation can remain, growth can remain, but the added weight does not have to remain. I'll see you in the next episode.